Are you currently looking for a bookstore that has a great selection of books? Well, Kizzy's Books and More is that bookstore. Visit www.kizzy'sbooksandmore.com to purchase your next book for our book club. Use coupon code VulgarGenius to receive 10% off the subtotal of your first order.
Pink and blue, step to the side. There's a new color in town. What Does Brown Mean to You is the debut children's book from educator Ron Grady. In this book, we meet Benny, a little boy talking about different ways the color brown is explored and celebrated throughout his life. From Benny's beautiful brown skin to the color of his grandmother's coffee, the color brown shines throughout his delightful story. Ron Grady joins us to talk about his career as a nature preschool teacher and his love for drawing brought about this much-needed story. We also speak about the ways parents can be encouraged to have conversations with their little ones about race and ethnicity. Stay with us on another episode of the Vulgar Geniuses podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Vulgar Geniuses podcast. We are your hosts.
My name is Denny.
And I am Veronica. And today we have a brilliant, wonderful, amazing debut author. His name is Ron Grady. He is the author of our special feature for the month of January. You are our second interview for 2023.
Yes.
And we are really excited to talk with you today. So here's a little information for those who might not know about our debut author today. Ron Grady is a preschool educator and researcher. He teaches at a nature preschool in New Orleans, and his art and story are inspired by the children he watches play, wonder, and explore the world each day. His website, childology.co, hosts his blog and illustrated resources for educators, parents, and caregivers. He lives with his husband, Josh, and their temperamental orange cat, Thor. You can visit him on his Instagram at childology.co and at Ron Draws Things. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today, Ron?
Doing awesome. So happy to be here, guys. Yeah.
We are so happy and congratulations.
Yes.
Thank you. Wow.
For the new release.
It's so surreal.
So I am going to pass it off to my dear friend here, and she is going to take it over for a bit.
So we like to ask our guests a couple questions so we get to know you. Because it's not a hidden secret that you wrote the book and also drew it, which is I don't know, that's a talent right there that we don't have. What is your favorite thing to draw though?
Oh my gosh, well, it's so funny. First off, I appreciate that question. I've never had anyone ask me that. I love drawing people. I love drawing people. My favorite things, especially people's faces. I don't know what it is, just you can capture so much. So yeah, I love drawing people. I've always just I keep a pen in my hand all the time. I'm holding it up so you can't see on the podcast, but I'm always doodling little faces, little circles, some eyes, something like that. I draw those all the time. So many faces. Yeah.
Your art definitely reflects that. Your art in your book is beautiful.
Yeah.
The drawings are so cute. I wish you could get merch.
Oh my gosh.
Limited edition shirts.
Yes.
Yeah. Good idea. Make that note right here.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Talk to the publicity team. Let them know.
Hey.
Yeah, my son loved, because I had to, I'm the true test would be with my toddler. He loved the drawings and he loved the little people. Yes. He's like, oh, they're outside. Is he outside? Yes, he's outside. I know you love outside. So when you are not in nature and with the children, where can we find Ron?
Oh, so Ron is probably in the yoga studio. Number one, loves a good hot yoga. Also in the library. So I don't know if you guys know this. I actually just started my PhD program. So I am in the library a lot these days as well. So yeah, Ron's in the yoga studio in the library and maybe taking a walk just like outside to get some air, right? Like down the street, down like past the park. Those are my kind of main haunts. And then one other place you'd find Ron for sure is in the coffee shop. I love a good overpriced latte, I guess. What can I say?
Oh, that's your drink of choice, a nice latte.
That's right. That's my drink of choice. That's one of them.
Yes.
A small hot vanilla latte, please. Yes, that's it. No.
Yes. I cannot judge because I just got myself a cold brew
Mm-hmm.
maker. It has
Oh,
changed
yeah.
my life. I'm like, it's keeps you going.
Yeah.
So your book has the color brown in it, but what is Ron's favorite color?
Yes. All right. So I have a confession to make. My favorite color is blush pink. I love it. I
Cute.
have so much blush pink. Millennial pink, I hear it's also sometimes called, but I like to say blush pink because maybe it's not like millennial pink. I don't know. That's my color. Like I feel like if there was a color I was inside, it would be blush pink. It's my real favorite color. So
That's
so
a very pretty color.
It's okay. All of our insides are all blush pink.
that's true for many reasons.
This is a question from a friend. What is your first year as a teacher like?
Oh, what was my first year. So my first year teaching, so it was in 2016 was my first like real full year teaching, and I started teaching at a school that was like based on like child-centered practices. So children get to lead the way. We are responding to what children are interested in and building the curriculum around that. Like the technical term is like emergent curriculum. And I was paired with a phenomenal mentor teacher who really had just like so much expertise in the field and was so patient and so supportive. So my first year teaching was awesome. I feel like I really lucked out. Uh, Exhausting for sure. I mean, I taught a class of 2-year-olds turning 3. So anyone who has worked with or has had at least one 2-year-old turning
Oh
3
my God.
knows how intense that is. So, and not everybody was potty trained. It's funny. I was actually just looking at my notes from my first year teaching today. I'm not just saying this. And so I was like, oh wow, like that was intense. But it was great. It was such a learning curve, right? I think that it taught me how amazing children are and how much they have to offer. And just really kind of, yeah, it was really kind of mind blowing. So
Mm.
it was quite an experience. I can't believe it's been that long now. Wow, 6, 7 years now. But yeah.
Wow. Oh
And
my
and you're
goodness.
standing strong.
I'm
Yeah.
still here. I'm still here. So I'm still in the field. Yeah, and it's kind of wild though, right? Because I don't know. I feel like teaching is never something I really expected to get into. My mom is a
Mm.
teacher. My mom works with young children also. She's worked with like kids from over all ages. So started in like high school, did some older elementary, now works with young children. But it's just never something I expected myself to get into. But here I am, yeah, into the world of early childhood. So
What does your mom think of you going into education and all the things you've achieved up to
yeah.
some far?
Oh well, it's funny. I think she's just happy as long as I'm happy. And I feel like that maybe is a very mom thing. I don't have kids myself, but I can imagine that would be a parent thing, right? Like
Yes.
you just want your child to be happy and able to move in the world in the way that feels good to them. So she's
Mhm.
thrilled as long as I'm thrilled, and she's like, well, if it's working for you, great. Um, yeah. So she's pretty good about it.
And what was the last thing you learned from a kid?
Ooh. Oh man, what's the last thing I learned from it? Well, I actually did a reading of the book today. And I don't know if this sounds like this will be the funny version. And I was drawing one of the main characters in the book, named Benny. And I started coloring like him in with a marker, and one of the kids just shouted out, "He looks really creepy." And I was like, "Oh, okay, okay." I was like, "Thanks." And it's just like, so I think I share that story just to say like the importance of being like honest and not taking things too seriously and just being willing to go with the flow and say what's on your mind. Like, hey, that always sticks with me. It's just like I got this rush of like, oh yes, this is why, right? This is what's so wonderful. And what I'm always reminded of: don't take yourself too seriously, because you could be doing a reading or doing that, but you're just a guy doing a thing. And then another, I guess, more like serious thing I've learned from a kid is that like a little bit goes a long way when it comes to listening to children. And so
Mhm.
I was just visiting my nephew and my niece uh, just over the New Year, actually, and just really got a chance to play, like, just like play around with my nephew. He loves to play all these different like battle games where you have a shield and stuff like that, and it was just like 5 minutes was the most nourishing thing to him. And so just a
Mm.
reminder of like the importance of being present as
Mm.
well, right? And so uh, yeah, just how valuable it is to be present, to be focused, and to be willing to be in the moment, and how that sets a foundation over time for really a lifetime of relationship and understanding that,
Right.
hey, you're an important person. Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, that means a lot, especially to children when they always feel like they're not being seen and always
totally.
glossed over, and adults got to do adults thing, and they just fit you in the time frame when they need you there. But
Yeah,
sometimes you're like, you have to notice like the child is like asking you for your presence and for your time, and that means a lot. Yeah, those both of
absolutely.
those, the honesty thing, children can be brutal.
Yes. As I
Yes.
was I was asking Cairo today, so what do you want to ask Mr. Ron? He was like, well, mommy, brown is really not my favorite color though. And I'm like, well, that's okay, but we're all brown. We have all brown in us. He's like, but still, it's blue. And I'm like, okay, we'll stop it right here. We'll move on. We'll move on.
Yes, yes.
So,
Okay, yes,
again, I just want to say congratulations on your
thank
debut
you.
release of What Does Brown Mean to You?
Thank
It
you.
dropped this past Tuesday, and we saw in your stories, as you mentioned earlier, that you had a chance to do a live reading at St. George's Episcopal School in New Orleans.
Yeah,
What
yeah,
has your week looked like so far since the release?
yeah.
And what was the experience? What was that to experience, to see all of these children sitting in front of you and you reading
Yeah.
this book that you wrote for the very first time?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. So it's been uh definitely a whirlwind, I think practically speaking. I was like physically in Houston on release day, finishing up my visit with my family and came back to New Orleans. And so was sort of managing all of those things like as I was in this big flux. But you know, I guess it's been amazing to see the book finally be in people's hands and so surreal. I've had a lot of friends who have children who've sent me pictures of their kiddos with the books. Some good teacher friends who have sent pictures of them reading the books to their classrooms, and so it is just, I don't know, it's so nourishing. I think personally to me to see this being in the hands of actual children. Early childhood is my life. I'm totally an early childhood nerd. And I spend so much time thinking about children and their lives. And I feel so honored to contribute to something that, for at least many children, I hope will become a cultural artifact of theirs, right? So it's like, wow, this is phenomenal. Like some kid is going to remember this and remember, like, oh, I remember it in that book. And like, it's just
Right.
wild to me. So it's sort of sinking in. Um, and I have, so I did a reading today, as you mentioned, and that was so awesome. So, St. George's is actually the first school that I worked at.
Ah,
So I was out of undergrad and had, kind of started a PhD program and finished and like, decided not to go that route. And so after a few months, I decided to start teaching, and I came to St. George's, and instantly it was a great fit. And so they're always like they're like my family, right?
Mm.
And so it just felt so full circle, so nourishing to get to share that with them and to see the children connect with the characters, with the story. And I mean, it was awesome, because I've read a million children's stories to groups of children over the years, but finally to get to read my own and to share it and to watch, as children's eyes lit up as they got to see Benny and Benny's parents and Benny's dog and Benny's family. That was so awesome. And so, looking ahead to like what the week, I guess, like from, third, I guess the 10th will look like. I have a couple more readings planned. And so I'm looking forward to those as well. Excuse me, I'm talking so fast. I guess I'm excited. But
Aw.
but it has been, honestly, it's so surreal. And I always say that this was a bucket list item for me. And so I'm so grateful that it got to happen and that there's still hopefully more yet. So yeah, it was so awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Benny needs a second book. And maybe Benny meets Denny on that second book. Because I was like, Ron was so close. This could have been me. Like, this could have been me. Like, this could have been my family. This is it.
Yes.
But I think it was really a good fit for you, because I think when you read the book as a parent, that somebody that really cares a lot about children wrote the book.
Thank you.
Because like even on how you word it and how you explained, it's to the point that like my son was like looking at your book straight up from start to finish.
Oh,
so I think we read a lot of books to him, and sometimes he'll like deviate and he'll start doing other things and be like, are we still here? Are we still doing, are we still reading? But with that book, he was like, oh, they're outside. Oh, there's a dog. Oh, mommy, he's dirty and he went inside the house.
Oh,
Like little things.
Oh, that totally warms my heart. And I hope I'm not cutting you off, but like it's so, because that was really something that I hope to do with this book. I think that so often, when we adults look at children's lives, we're always trying to rush to the next thing, right? We see their lives as valuable or like what they're going to become in 10 years. And not that that's bad, right? Like we're supposed to be building them up to be good adults, right? But I think it's less often. I think it's less like it's happening more and more now, but still not necessarily super often that we take a look at a child's life as it is in a single day and just really sit with it and say, like, everything that's happening here is meaningful and valuable. And so that's what I really wanted to do with Benny's day. Like, just like, this is your day. You wake up, you're going outside, you're seeing your parents, you're having breakfast, maybe you're going to go play a little bit. Maybe your plans shift, right? Your plans shift and change, and that's okay. Now we're going to do something different. Like, how many times a day do we have to, work with a child to understand, hey, things are changing now. All right,
Right.
we're on to this next thing, right? And so, having dinner and a little dance party. And so it's so wonderful to hear that too. So thank you for sharing that, because that's really what I was going for, just honoring, I guess, the richness that is everyday life, even for young children.
Yeah, I think his favorite part was like, oh, mommy, he has a blanket too. Because my son was connected to his stinky blanket. Don't ask. But when it was like, oh, he has a blanket too, I'm like, but I bet it's not stinky though. And he's like, oh, we don't know that, because that's what I tell him. We don't know that, mommy.
So I feel like red, blue, pink, and purple get all of the hype in children's books. But brown is that one color that gets left for like bears.
Yeah.
And I know that you want children to be able to come to their own conclusions about the theme of the book.
Sure. Yeah.
And what is being centered around this color. But I would like for you to expand on what this color means for you as a writer, and your desire to give it the attention that it so much deserves.
Yeah, absolutely. So what a wonderful question. And I always tell people I talk with, sometimes I feel like I'm talking in circles, but I hope it's going to get background. So if it doesn't, let me know and I'll make sure it gets to the point. But I think where I start with that is like implicit associations and understanding the fact that throughout, our lives, and especially as young children, we're making a lot of associations between colors and goodness and badness. And, so like at its core, I want children to make positive associations with brown and brown skin, right? Like that was that is really at the core of it. Um, so that is sort of like the centerpiece. And obviously, as a Black boy growing up, I also didn't see a whole lot of books with characters that looked like me in it, and so I wanted to make sure that was, I guess, that was important to me to include in the book as well. And then, and I hope I'm getting at the question, but then one thing that was also important to me though was to center it in a way that where the family in here, right, like all the family has brown skin tones and brown is this color, but it's just like everywhere. It's also a part of just the world as it is, right? And it can be celebrated, it can be good, and it also is just there in the middle of all of these other intersecting and overlapping narratives. Like there is this beautiful brown, these beautiful hues of brown. And so in some ways, I guess I imagine it's like a little bit of like intersectional lens as well, if that makes any sense. There's like all of these different things that you engage with in different ways. Yeah, so I don't know if that begins to answer the question, but I really wanted to, center that here and to celebrate that. And I thought it would be, a really, I don't know, I at least hope that it continues to be received as well as it seems to have been received by the people I've talked with so far.
Yeah, because when clearly, like you said, like brown skin hasn't been reflected in a lot of children's book. Well,
Right.
at least I was growing up, but now there's more diversity and it's more supported and there's more effort. Yeah, I was being honest with you, like when I told you, like I recognize the self-love and self-acceptance kind of part of it, the reflection, but then sometimes maybe when I would get to read it again, just like brown is just there. It's everywhere. Like I think that is the part that even as an adult I kind of like failed to even see when I first read the book. It's just like it's just there. It's neither it's like almost omnipresent in nature, and like just it exists, exists, and it's okay for it to be like that. It doesn't always have to be something more than just oh, it has to be like be bad or good. Sometimes it's just exists. And that I think, and that's the thing that I've I missed the first time I read it, and then the more that I was kind of like, oh yeah, he's just making us see that we are everywhere, kind of deal.
Absolutely. No, that's so well said.
Yeah. So you wrote the book and provided the illustrations. Can you tell us like this process of like being an educator and like also that somebody that loves to draw, and how all of these things come together for the book?
Yeah, I think that, well, in 2020, when we were having, when I guess the first big wave of conversations around, racial reckoning in the United States were going on, and also in the middle of the pandemic, I had a lot of time to think about what it would mean to have these conversations about race, conversations about identity and skin tone with children, and in ways that would be accessible to children while also acknowledging the realities that they do notice differences in skin tone and skin color, but also similarly, as you said, like, the fact that while they notice these things, yes, they bring their biases and ideas, but they also don't bring nearly the weightiness that we as adults bring to these constructs, right, and to these ideas. And so I was just wrestling, right? Like, what do I do? How do I bring this up? And especially in the context I was working in. So at that time, I was working in a context that wasn't very diverse. It was a lot of actually white children in it. And so I was like, okay, like, how do we talk about this and we wrestle with this in a way that is going to like both like make sense and bring parents and families in, and also like honor the beauty and goodness of the children of color in my care, and also honor my own identity as a man of color, right? So like where, like how do all of these like intersect? And so then I started, I just, I was like, well, what is brown? Like that was like, I was sitting at my kitchen table one day and I was like, what is brown? And I started thinking about all the good things it was, right? Like all the awesome things it was, all of the like the warmth, the sweet things, like right. So like what is it? And then I just kind of started drawing. It was one of those late nights. I had a little iPad at the table, and my husband had gone to sleep, and I was just up thinking about this, and I just started doodling away, and came up with some pages, and that's kind of like where it was born. It was a very, very different version. Very, very rough. I look back on them now and laugh. But that's really kind of like the birth of it, I guess. And I think it was just sort of like, yeah, I just felt, free to try it. And I think when I first put the very, 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 very first like seedling together, it was what I guess helped me get through a lot of my own anxieties about my own artistic abilities or whatever, was that I just knew that I was just making it for my kids in that moment, right? And I knew that they were going to be receptive, and that children are generally so accepting, right? So it's like, okay, well, I'll share it with them and we'll see what they think, right? And we'll see what happens. And so it kind of grew from there. But yeah, just sort of that, like, I guess so, really that reflective stance and just sort of that, like, really that time to think and also wondering, like, how do I communicate this to the community, like that I'm in, to my community of children, yeah, in a way that will resonate, right? And so that's just where it started. I hope that answers the question a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. Because I think I always tell authors or creators that do stuff for children that I think it's the hardest thing to do.
Mhm.
Because as adults, we can process stuff on our own. Like if we read a book or something, if we consume something, a form of media, we don't, the creator doesn't have to necessarily explain stuff to us. It's kind of
Mhm.
like our responsibility to dig deeper. But if you do it for children, I think it's a little bit different because it's kind of like you have to be like not really in their face, but something that would they
Mhm.
understand, they'd be interested. And after that, they can be like, oh, there's like, some sort of lesson in their head that you can impart.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest thing to do. So I think your book definitely did all those three for me as a
Oh.
parent and somebody that reads a lot of children's books.
Mm.
Like we read to Cairo every day, maybe like twice, three times a day, like two
Yeah.
to three books every time.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
consumes a lot of books. So for me to be like, when I first saw the picture, I'm like, oh, Kyra would like this. Just like from the illustration, the title, it's like very catchy. Like a parent would want to read it, like how you like put the rhymes in it and
Thank
how the
you.
story
Yes.
flows,
Yes.
It's simple, but sometimes it's the most simplest things that make sense to kids. It doesn't have to
Totally.
have all the bells and whistles.
Yeah.
Totally. Totally. No, thank you for doing that. And the rhyme too is just, it was something I really, I remember going back and forth with my editor about like, does it rhyme? Do we not rhyme? Do we not rhyme? Do we not rhyme? So it's nice to hear that that resonates as well. So yeah.
Yeah, it was cute because like, I think like he would remember, like, repetition. Children
Mhm.
remember more. Like you probably know more about that because this is your like field, like early education. So I'm
Totally.
sure like it's very intentional, and as a reader, as a consumer, like you can feel it.
Oh, well, thank you. Yes. No, I just, yeah, it's again a joy to hear. And yeah, I just wanted it to rhyme. Also wanted it to be simple and kind of like we mentioned again, just wanted it to be like accessible to children, like something that children would like to re-encounter like again and again and see their lives reflected in. And over the course of time too, right? Because I think they're also, there's often like, like I like there isn't like I think like too much text in the book, right? And so I feel like it's open ended enough where like a child could see themselves in it from like anywhere from 2, like 6 or 7. Like these are what your days are like, right? And so it's something that I hope can grow with children and as their understanding grows. And by hearing you talk about that and how, again, it has this sort of like quality, it reminds me at the readings today, I did a reading for some 2 year olds and then all the way up to kindergarten. And so there was a little girl in the twos who was like, "Oh, mama, daddy, puppy," and she came at it from that angle, right? And then I had a kindergartner who was like, "Huh, like, why do all the characters have brown skin?" And so it was like this, just like the range, right, of possibility within the text, and really, I think, bespeaks to the like, I guess, speaks to the reality that children do interpret these visual texts in so many different ways, and that. Uh, yeah, so I hope that it can be open and accessible on all those levels because they're all valid and all important.
How did you get into art?
Huh? Yeah. Well, I always love to draw. It's just been something I've done since I was like a really little kid. Like I remember, so like when I was a young kid, like we went to church when I was younger, and I like don't really remember all of like what was said, but I remember being a little kid, like kneeling on the floor, like with the pew as like my desk, and like taking whatever programs were there and using my mom's pens to draw stories. Like I kid you not. And so like that, those are the earliest memories I have of drawing. I was probably like 4 or 5. Um, and if I had to credit like a person with inspiring me to draw, that would be my sister. So I have an older sister, she and I have like kind of an age gap. She's like 12 and a half years older. But she was always so creative, and I just always loved like everything that she did. Like she was my idol. She still is one of my favorite people in the whole world. And so like she drew, so I drew, right? Like I was doing anything she was doing, I was doing, right? So, she was always drawing, always creating something, always. And that, so I was like, yeah, I'm doing that too. So I always had sketchbooks alongside hers. I remember drawing like, she used to draw these little flowers and stuff like that. And so I remember I was so fascinated with those. So I always tried to draw them too. She used to draw all of these, like, she drew people a lot. And all these like, beautiful ladies. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to draw those too. That's what I want to draw. So that's kind of where it started. And then it's funny because I so appreciate this question because it reminds me of like how all the different people throughout my life who have nurtured that in me. And um, that's kind of where it started though, Yeah.
The origin story.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
So you were talking about a little girl earlier. I mean, a 2-year-old that asked you about like um identified people in your book. Was that intentional that you had a multi-generational family in your book?
Totally, totally. Absolutely. I think it is something that is important to see, especially in communities of color. I think very often like grandparents are a huge part of your life, and so I wanted to depict that. I thought it was important to have them all just living together harmoniously and really forming a community of care and love around this child, right? And oh, excuse me, guys. 'Tis the season, I guess, for a little cough. But just yeah, having like them all together felt super important to me. And again, it takes a village, right? And I know it's trite, but it's trite for a reason because there's so many people within the life, even of a family, right? Like that contribute to the well-being and growth of a child. And in this book, everyone kind of does a different thing with Benny, right? Like not everyone's doing everything with Benny. They're all sort of like doing the things that, at least in my mind, I like to think come most naturally to them, right? Like I love to think that grandpa loves to read a story, and that dad loves to make breakfast, and that Graham loves to sit and read her news, and but also say good morning, right? Like all of these things that they bring these unique beauties to his life, that sort of like allow him to bring his own unique energy to theirs. And yeah, and it's weird because I guess I wasn't close to my grandparents growing up, but it is something that like was just really important for me to put in this, and seeing my mom now as a grandma as well is so wonderful. So, she's really close with, again, my nieces and my nephews and stuff like that. So it's great. Yeah, it's really important.
So let me ask you, what are the type of conversations that you would encourage parents to have about teaching their little ones about race and ethnicity that will help them facilitate a love for their skin
Yeah,
in a world
yeah,
that fights so hard to make it seem less than?
yeah, absolutely. That's a wonderful question. I think the first thing is to declare it beautiful and explicitly. And, it's so interesting because in some ways I feel like this book, I like to say it does that, but it doesn't do it like on every page. It's not saying that explicitly, right? But I think that's sort of the underlying message. And I think that especially in a world where brown skin, black skin, dark skin, right, is made to be viewed as less than, it's important that we explicitly counteract that, right? Like you have to build that up for children. You have to be explicit about it because they're going to be getting implicit and explicit messages that, again, like you said, that their skin color is less than, right? So don't be afraid to say it is explicitly beautiful. Um, I also think depicting characters with brown skin in a variety of roles and narratives is important as well, right? Like not just having it be a part of like the very special book, right? But just to have it be kind of just everywhere to give them a diversity of narratives with characters that look like them. Excuse me. I think that is also so important. I also think it's valuable to not be afraid to talk about it and don't bring your own anxieties to the conversation. Recognize that children will have their own, like children will have many questions and will have their own wonderings, but don't be afraid to engage it and don't be afraid to say, to take a pause, right? And say like, I don't know about this, or this is something I want to think about how to say, or I'm not, I want to think about how to share this with you in a better way. And I'm going to think about that and we're going to come back to this, right? Like, don't feel like you have to have it all at once. I think very often we feel like we need to have all the answers, especially on issues that are as broad as these. And the truth is that we don't, because our conversation, our understanding is constantly evolving. And that is the nature of inquiry itself, right? And learning and unlearning and constructing and deconstructing, right? So it's this constant process of flux. And so we just really have to lean into it. And let's see if I feel like those are my three main ones. I also would encourage uh, parents, though, and families, and those supporting and working with children to mention skin color as well, just so that, like, yeah, like, oh yeah, that person has like dark brown skin. This person has light brown skin. That person has peachy skin. Like, however, mention it. Talk about it. Talk about it. That's so important and something that again we don't often do. And then if we do it disparagingly, unfortunately, and even within, so it's like, talk about it, talk about it, talk about it. It's there. Kids are noticing it. And we do them a disservice if we pretend like we're not noticing it and it's not there. Right. So, yeah.
I don't know. Like I was just like taking notes in my head. I'm like, yeah, I need to do this. Like this is a legit professional that's telling me to do this, That's why I was like, I was kind of lost in that moment because I'm like, yeah, like Cairo does notice, like,
Yeah.
we would always like kind of like, oh look, mom, like mommy, why do you have like little freckles on your skin? Or like, mommy, why does auntie have like stuff in her face? And I'm like, well, because it's moles and this and that,
Yeah.
so I'm sure like because to them it's just like I'm just curious. I wanted to know, I wanted to learn.
Totally.
Yeah. So speaking of nature, um, it's very interesting to me what you're doing like with a nature preschool. I wish like, I would have an opportunity to have like Cairo do that.
Yeah.
But what is it about playing in nature that allows, for you that allows the child to maximize their learning?
Oh, what a wonderful question. Gosh, so many things. I think that in gosh, I could go a million different directions. I'm going to pick one for now and maybe meander into another. But I think the natural world is simultaneously like grounding in a way. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's very grounding. It is, I think, just on a purely practical level, though, like as far as like things like noise goes, as volume level goes, those things like a shout in the forest or a big cry in the forest or just, being loud in the forest is very different than like when all the noise is bouncing off of four walls. So that in and of itself contributes to a lot less, I guess what I'm trying to say is a lot less tension between within the classroom environment, right? I think that very often within traditional classrooms, within four-walled classrooms, again, I know they are wonderful. I've taught in many of those as well. But I think being in nature is just like the world is just so big and so wide. It's, there's space. I think there's like always enough to go around, if that makes any sense as well, right? There's enough sticks and leaves for everybody. This tree is big enough theoretically, right? There's some trees that can hold us all in different places, right? And so just having that like far less scarcity is really wonderful. And there's so many different things in nature too, right? Like you might be someone who's interested in plant life. You might be a child that's interested in little bugs and insects. You might be a child who's really into clouds or just like, watching the berries grow or playing in a big open field, but it's all there. It's all accessible to you right away. And so I think that is so, so special. I mean, I think it also does this wonderful thing of it just builds your relationship with nature, generally speaking. And I think that in and of itself is so beneficial. And then I guess when I think about maximizing potential, I think that, nature-based education, at least as I've experienced it so far in my own work, like the things that you're doing, I don't know, there's just this direct connection with like tangible reality that's so beneficial for young children. Um, yeah, so I'm watching this water go down the chute, like as I'm making the chute itself, as it's raining, like all these things, like my process, the process of the natural world, and my impact on the environment are all this like, they're all this kind of like synthesis, right? Which I think is really, or at least I've experienced in the children I work with, is really just super engaging. Yeah.
And I bet it's super fun.
Oh yeah.
Like I
Oh,
think as
yeah.
a child, like I would like,
Yes.
even as an adult, I was like, yeah, I'll do that. If I had like more time, probably I would want like, all children, to be in that space.
Yeah, it made me, as you were talking, it made me go back to my elementary school days of like sitting underneath the jungle gym with my friend and like digging in the dirt and making like these heart cakes, like playing in the dirt, playing with roly polies, taking pine needles and making bracelets out of them. And it's like, oh man, yeah, being in nature as a kid is a lot of fun. You get to play in the dirt as long as you don't get in trouble for getting dirty from
That's
your
right.
parents. But yeah, like, having those moments of like, yes, I did all of that as a kid. And last year, for Lent, I was like, okay, I want to take these 40 days and just really focus on what it is to reconnect myself to play. And like, going outside with Cairo and blowing bubbles and playing hopscotch and doing games like that for those 40 days of like, what is it to get back in center with the child's self? And I think, like not only would children benefit from playing in the nature, like, or just learning about life, but adults as well, and being a part of that journey along with them definitely will, engage you into these conversations that you probably didn't think that you would have inside of you to investigate with your child, right?
Yes, totally. I love that you touched on play and fun too, right? Like it is really, really fun to be out there and to just like, oh my gosh, like there are days when I'm like, oh, I'm having a great time. This is awesome. I'm just like walking outside, like putting your hand, it sounds so weird, but like putting your hand on the bark of a tree. Oh my gosh. so like exhilarating, so exciting, climbing a little bit of it. Like it's awesome. So yeah, yes to all of that as well. That's
Yeah, I think
great.
like fun for children, but also like very humbling for adults.
Hmm.
Because, like, sometimes we think we are it, and then like
Yeah.
we go out to nature and we're like, nope, you are not it. You are part of
Yeah.
this like little literally ecosystem that makes this world go round. And
Hmm.
like you have to take care of me or else like you
Yeah.
would not be here without me. So I don't know. I think it's just really a special thing because I like being grounded. I I have a lot of earth in me, I
Hmm.
think. So I appreciate, like all the work that you do like with a nature preschool. And I'm like, one day, Cairo. One day we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it
Yes.
more, and teacher mommy style. As he calls me. Um
Yes.
why is journaling and documenting an important aspect in your, like you've mentioned, in the social emotional development of children while they're in
Yeah.
play?
Sure. Sure. That's a wonderful thing. I think that to answer that, I would say that it helps. I guess two things. It helps the adults working with young children to recognize the richness of what's unfolding. I think very often, it can be hard, right? Like there's a lot going on, especially as like a teacher or even a parent, right? Like you have a million things that you're doing or thinking about even as you're playing or working with this child, right? And so taking that time to document gives you something to go back to and say like, oh wow, like let's look at this moment, like really, really look at this moment, um, and see like what was happening here that can inspire you to take a closer look in the future, and also kind of give you, if done consistently, a sort of this, I guess, timeline of how your child or how the children in your care are developing. So I think that's really important. It kind of gives you this chronicle and baseline. And I think it also shows, especially when an adult is documenting or journaling about something that a child is doing in play, it shows the child that that is important. And I think children know that their play is important already, but children also look to us to tell them and show them and model and reinforce for them what is valuable and holds meaning. And so we show children that this thing uh, holds meaning, right? Like I think there's this, I forget who it was, and I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, who mentioned how often like holding a pen and paper and writing something down, especially to children, is a sign of like, oh, you're doing something that is like really important. This is grown up work, right? And so even just to like, when a child is talking, you're like, oh, I'm going to write that down. Or, oh, they're playing. You're like, oh, I'm just taking notes and noticing what you're doing. Like, oh, wow, I must be doing something really important. Um, and then when you bring in like digital aspects of documentation as well, all right, if you take photography, for example, and then, it allows you to take that back to children and allow them to reflect on their own experiences. And so that is another level that is so, so, so valuable, right? So really everyone gets to come together and reflect on this experience and say, this is what's going well, this is what went well here, this is where we're growing and where we're going to grow and what we're going to work on. And also opens up a space, especially visual and digital documentation. It opens up the space for children to articulate their own goals and offer potentially different insights as well, right? So we, like you said, we're not always it. We don't always get exactly what was going on there. We can't always capture the nuance that is in that situation. And so when we have this documentation in this journal, yes, we have a chronicle of what we were thinking and what the children were doing and maybe what they were saying. Um, but maybe in time, like the children have a different idea about what this meant. Or maybe that meaning shifts over time as the children grow and they're able to reinterpret and filter that. So, it's just nice to have something tangible and also to train yourself to take a close eye to, again, the beauty of the everyday, right?
Right.
In little moments.
Yeah, and I think also maybe that's why children like to display their art and
Totally.
like to show adults or whomever is willing to listen, like
Yeah.
look at this. This is what I've done, because this is a reflection of like, I'm also thinking about the stuff
Yes.
that I need, that I need to improve on, that is stuff that I like with my drawing or whatever it is. They display it, all of it. That's so interesting, because it also allows like whomever is taking care of the child, parent, caregiver, teacher, to be like you said earlier, just reiterating, being present in that situation and really like analyzing what can be done more for that child.
So we have one more question, and
Okay.
well, actually two more questions, and then we'll be done with our interview.
Okay.
So learning has evolved a lot in these like last 200 years in the US when you're talking about education. And so as you look at where we are currently and what is held as important in the classroom, what is your vision for yourself as a teacher that you hope you would be able to bring into the classroom that you feel is necessary to the growth and the development of our little ones?
Yeah. Off the bat, I'm thinking that it is a disposition of listening. And I think I've sort of touched on it before, but I think that we need to listen to children, and learn how to listen to children, right? To understand that they are communicating with us so many through so many different ways, right? They're not just using words. So I think that there's this concept in like it's called the Reggio Emilia philosophy, and it's called the 100 languages of children, and the idea that children encounter and engage with the world through play, song, dance, movement, through using clay, through creating art, through paints, things like that, right? And so I think when we can really learn to listen to children through all of these, I think that's what's needed. Children are so knowledgeable, they're so creative, they're so intuitive, they're inventive. They don't have everything, of course, no one does, right? Because they're human, just like us. But really listening to children and trusting them. So yeah, that listening, that trust is what I think is so vital, and needs to be rewoven into the way that we conceptualize our early education, and maybe one day all education, all the way through. Yeah.
So we are at the part of the conversation that is always my absolute favorite is we would like to know your top 5 favorite books of all time.
Oh,
that could
wow.
be a combination of, books that you felt like were influential for you growing up or as a teacher. Or you could also do your top 5 favorite books that you are excited about, that you use in the classroom, or that that maybe you have an inside track of what is coming down the road from your publishing company or whatever.
Yeah.
It can be whatever you feel, whatever your top 5 are.
However, that 5 comes up.
Gosh. Okay. Well. Oh wow. This is really hard. I think I'm gonna like limit myself to children's books for now.
Okay.
Well, I'll start off with one actually that's not a children's book. One is called, this is so hard.
Welcome to our world.
and we're not rushing you. Take your time if you have to sit and think in it.
No, let me think. There's so many good books. Well, I'm going to just go with the ones that I'm feeling are super influential to me right now. So there's this one book called The Mosaic Approach. It's by a woman named Alison Clark. And it's a book for teachers. But in it, she sort of outlines the different ways that she gains all of these like preschoolers' perspectives on their experiences within early childhood spaces. And she uses it in this book to help inform the people who are, working to create and improve the space. Like she brings in the children's voices. And that book was just like mind blowing to me. She uses so many awesome methods. She talks to the children. She talks to their parents. She has the children take photos. She lets them take her on tours. It's phenomenal, and it's not an insanely long read. So the Mosaic Approach is definitely something that's foundational, I think, to my own practice and the way that I think about children and childhood for sure. Um, Another favorite book I'm thinking about now, children's books. There's a book by a woman named Phoebe Wall called Little Witch Hazel. It's so good. It's so good. It's this like little witch, and it goes through all the different seasons. There's like a winter, spring, summer, fall, and oh my gosh, it is adorable. Wall's like she's another author. She's wonderful. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. Another favorite children's book is called Home by a woman named Carson Ellis. And it looks at all these different homes, and just every page I turn, I feel cozy and intrigued and fascinated. So I guess what am I at? 3 right now? And then let's see, other books that have been seriously influential for me. Hmm. Oh, I will say there is one that is called, well, I'll say any book by a woman named Susan Stacy. So she is an educator. This is actually an educator book now, but she does a lot of work on documenting children's learning and on emergent curriculum. And her books just have this air of like respect and care and focus on young children. Again, that is just utterly foundational to the work that I do and the way that I understand children and childhood. So, okay, I guess that is 4.
One more.
I got one more. Let's see. What would be another one that has been just super, super influential to me? Oh, this is going to be, yeah, I guess it'll be another educator book, weirdly enough. Um, it is called They Don't Like Me, and it is by a woman named Jane Catch. And she works with young children to understand uh, their their like violent play, basically. And she again takes this very close-up stance. She considers what she sees unfolding. She talks, has real conversations with the children about their daily lives, and considers this, over years, and really paints this beautiful, interesting, challenging, nuanced picture of what it means to engage in this sort of play. And I'll let you come to your own conclusions about what she says and what she says. But it's another fascinating, interesting read. And so I guess there's a theme there of like really looking closely at children's lives and thinking about the rich meaning that is held in the things that are often overlooked by adults. Yeah, so those are just a few of the 5. Wow.
You know, it's not set in stone. It might change tomorrow.
That's right.
You know,
That's
so you
right.
gotta check back at Ron, make sure it's still the same 5.
That's right. That's right.
Well, thank you so much for coming onto the show, for talking to us about this beautiful book and about the work that you do as an educator. I know that especially since the pandemic has started, it has caused a lot of problems within the school, and it's made things difficult, and you all have had to be extremely creative on how you were going to be able to educate the children during this particular peculiar time that we're in. But I just want to, encourage you and just say thank you so much for being able to, share this space with us this evening to talk about the work that you have done and the book that you have created. It means so much to us to be able to have this conversation today. Is been really important to us to make sure that we bring children into these conversations that we're talking about when we're talking about literature. Because I know normally we tend to focus on the adults and the YA, but to bring the little ones in and to show the importance of the books that they will be being fed on a regular basis of what that means to a child, and those things that they remember when they grow up and become adults, those books that really affect them. And I know that your book will be one, especially to all those children that you read to today. So again, just thank you so much for coming on and speaking with us this evening. We wish you much luck soon. You
Oh,
won't be
thank you.
Mr. Grady anymore. You'll be Dr. Grady,
Yes.
which is wonderful. We cannot wait to
thank
see that
you.
change for you and where you're going to go from here on out.
Yeah,
Thank
like
you.
for me, just like as a parent, when I had my child, I was very intentional in picking books for us to take home, because you know you gotta preach what you say, right?
Yeah.
You gotta do what you're talking about. So I would come home and search the library, and Veronica knows this. I'd be like in the library looking for books just so we can see ourselves reflected in those books, because I did not have that growing up. So for for this book to be part of like Kairos books, to be like, oh yeah, I've had that since I was 3. It's kind of like special, because it it's a certain like experience to remember those things when you're older. Like for him to not have that experience of like, yeah, I really don't know what it feels like to be in a page of a book. He won't have that anymore. He won't have that. And that to me is like, you've done, to me, like that's the work. You've come
Thank
across
you.
like, you're part of like this child's life now.
Thank you. That's
So-
wonderful to hear. Thank you. Yes.
So I want Benny's sequel though. That's what I really want. I say all of that to say we need more books.
All right,
Pump them
all
out.
right.
Okay.
Okay.
We need series. We need television shows. We need movies. Let's go.
Yes.
That's right. Oh,
Under that resources tab, I'll be printing all the things. So just so I'm like, oh my goodness, why did I not know about this? So many things.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you guys. Well, it's been so fun to speak with you. You guys are awesome. And thank you for just all of the work that you guys are doing as well. It's amazing and so needed.
We hope you enjoyed our show.
Our show has been produced and edited by Preston Long. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our podcast.
Our theme song you've been nodding your head to is by Sean Kantrowitz. You can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Sean Dammit. That's SeanDammit.
Follow us on Instagram at The Vulgar Geniuses.
Bye!